For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. Isaiah 56:7. According to Kabbalistic tradition, humanity has 6,000 years to fulfill its divine purpose. Today, only about 215 years remain before that time runs out. This book is written in the genre of prophetic realism, a new literary direction blending biblical parable, science fiction, political thriller, and a subtle reflection on contemporary reality. The author invites readers to join Anna and Robert on a journey, through contact with extraterrestrial beings, philosophical inquiry, persecution by the powerful, rises and falls, toward an unexpected destination, the construction of the third temple in the middle of the ocean. Today, I'm reading the first chapter of my new book, The Third Temple. A journey that begins with fear, silence, and the first signs of something greater than ourselves. If you're curious about aliens, prophecy, and the future of humanity, stay with me. Listen. Subscribe. Like if it speaks to you. Share with your friends.
And the Lord saw that human wickedness was great on the earth, and that every thought and inclination of their hearts was only evil all the time. Genesis 6 verse 5. The Third Temple. By Alexander Gerald. Chapter 1. In the beginning. Seaman sat on empty shell crates, peering through the scope of his sniper rifle, counting the bodies of Russian conscripts scattered in lumps across the black soil about 150 meters east of their dugout. He had already counted 12 and was searching for a 13th, to make it an even number. The guys from his squad were watching a group of 6 former Russian brothers moving in single file slightly to the left, through a minefield the Ukrainians had laid just yesterday. No one was shooting. Kolya had a bet with Yura, a few cans of stew, on which of these brave representatives of the world's Second Army would blow up first. There was plenty of stew, so the wager was hardly about food. It was sport. One of the conscripts suddenly hunched over, clutched his chest, and flopped onto his back. Seaman shifted the scope to the fallen soldier. Through the scope, the man's wide-open mouth was clearly visible, gasping for air. He looked over 50, unshaven, filthy, a grandpa with a belly he had no business dragging across Ukrainian dirt. He should be lying on a stove, not crawling around on our land, Seaman thought. One of the man's comrades crouched low, said something to him, and jogged on to catch up with the others. The man on the ground went still. Heart attack, Seaman concluded. This isn't back home. You drop dead here, you become our black soil. Seaman hated Russian artillerymen, pilots, and missile crews, the ones far away, the ones he never saw. But these assault conscripts? He simply despised them. He was the commander of a drone hunter squad. They moved in a jeep armed with 3 paired machine guns, now camouflaged in the nearby bushes. They didn't pay much attention to the assault troops, engaging them wasn't their mission, unless someone got too close. That was rare. Gabriel, on 16 screens, monitored all his craft as they circled above different regions of Earth. Their main targets were nuclear weapons depots, atomic power plants, and of course, active war zones. One drone in particular held his attention, the one piloted by Ariel. She had approached the Shahid, hiding in its shadow. Gabriel zoomed in nearly to maximum. In the Ukrainian combat zone, it was relatively calm. Seaman heard a faint buzz in his earpiece. His trained ear immediately recognized the sound of an approaching Iranian Shahid, a reconnaissance suicide drone. He grabbed his RPG, stepped up to the trench's berm, and shouted, "Close eye, Shahid at 12 o'clock. Let's go." Gabriel saw the RPG aimed skyward. He jumped up and shouted, "Ariel, back off." But it was too late. The soldiers leaned into their weapon sights, tracking the incoming sound. Seaman spotted the drone's silhouette about 500 meters ahead. He aimed his stinger, heard the sharp tone in his earpiece, the missile had locked on. He pulled the trigger. The rocket burst from the launcher, kicking him slightly backward. About 10 seconds later, Seaman saw the drone explode into fragments, and then the sound of the blast reached his ears. "Got it! Everyone in the dugout, a response is coming," he shouted. His entire team rushed for cover. Seaman lingered at the berm for a second. Then, about 20 meters from where the Shahid had been hit, he saw something flash into existence, a kind of tube, spinning like a top, then crashing to the ground. Seaman ran into the dugout, slammed the armored door shut, and grabbed the radio. The captain's voice came through instantly. "Seryoga, we just shot down a Shahid. Looks like some debris hit something else." Seaman and the captain had been fighting together for nearly 2 years. They were long past formalities. "Describe it," the captain said firmly. "Never seen anything like it," Seaman replied. "Looks like the orcs cooked up something new." He quickly described what he'd seen. "Send me coordinates." Seaman heard Seryoga switch to the second line and call the assault team's commander. "Guys, get all your boys up on the berm. Don't let the orcs get close. I'm sending recon drones. If needed, we'll back you with artillery. A special forces unit will be with you in 30 minutes. Stay on comms. That's an order. Good luck." The special forces arrived about 40 minutes later in 2 armored personnel carriers. There were around 12 of them, and Seaman was surprised to see 5 Americans among them. They worked with quiet precision. By then it was dark. Seaman watched through night vision binoculars. He saw them approach the wreckage, record video, take photos. Then they found some kind of device, looked like a computer, and packed it into a backpack. A bit to the left, 3 soldiers wrapped something in a blanket. Gabriel zoomed the image to maximum and found Ariel's body. The soldiers wrapped her in some kind of cloth. Gabriel couldn't see her breathing, but somehow, he felt it. Alive, he exhaled. About 30 minutes later, the unit carefully made its way back across the field to the trench. Seaman approached the squad leader and asked, using his hands as well, "What the hell was that?" The Special Forces commander looked at him coldly. "No comments. Top secret." Seaman frowned. He turned away and glanced at the blanket. A hand was sticking out. Gloved, but not human. The fingers were 15 centimeters long. Fucking Russians, what kind of filth did they cook up this time, he thought. He pulled out his phone and snapped a few pictures. The commander reached out, demanding the phone. Seaman raised his rifle, spat at the man's feet, turned, and walked back into the dugout. Gabriel pressed the self-recovery button. The shards of the apparatus vanished silently, completely.
Robert sat in the front seat of the evacuation vehicle, one they had received from the Dutch just a few days ago as military aid to Ukraine. The so-called road tossed the vehicle in every direction, up and down. Through the slit of the armored glass, the sky ahead, to the east, was growing lighter, from time to time flashing red. It might have been the first hints of sunrise, or the glow of war. In the rearview mirror, he occasionally glanced at Anna's silhouette, barely visible in the dim light, pressed into the back seat, eyes tightly shut. Her hands clutched the armrests so hard her knuckles had gone white. Just an hour ago, she'd been sleeping like the dead, still dressed, during a lull in her shift. She used to have nightmares, wounded men screaming in pain, bodies she'd stitched up all day, severed limbs, torn up insides. And the eyes haunted her most, pleading, terrified, begging her to make the pain stop. Old men's eyes, and boys, and rivers of blood. Then, maybe 2 weeks in, something changed. She got used to it somehow, and the dreams became different. A house in Florida, the ocean warm, lulling, or nothing at all, like tonight. She had jolted awake at Robert's voice. "Get up. They told us to move. Fucking. I don't even know where. The fucking vehicle's waiting outside." Anna opened her eyes and sat up on the cot bench. Robert tossed her a jacket and her medical bag. Still not fully awake, she slipped on the jacket and slung the bag over her shoulder. Robert helped her outside. The armored vehicle they had received just 2 days ago was already there, engine growling. Now Anna sat, still pressed into the seat, gripping whatever she could. She was terrified. The bouncing made her nauseous. She felt like she might throw up or pee. Almost there, the driver, a Ukrainian soldier around 40, said quietly, pointing ahead and slightly to the right. Robert tried to remember the man's tense, gray face, lit only by the dashboard glow, a face that looked dead tired, but still sharp and focused. The soldier turned his head for just a second, smiled faintly at Robert. "Don't freak out. We'll win." Seconds later, the vehicle swerved hard to the right. Robert's body slammed toward the driver, then bounced over uneven ground before stopping a few meters from 2 mobile bunkers. "What is fucking going on?" Robert muttered, surprised. 50 meters ahead, under a camouflage net, sat an American military transport helicopter. Armed Marines stood around the perimeter. 2 Marines ran to the vehicle. One opened Robert's door, the other Anna's. "Follow me," one of them ordered, supporting Robert by the arm and motioning toward the right-hand bunker. He walked beside him. Robert turned and saw Anna jump heavily onto the frost-covered grass. She slipped but didn't fall. Anna fell. A Marine caught her by the arm, and she followed him toward the left bunker. He opened the door for her. Inside, a table, a few chairs on either side, a monitor, and windows sealed shut with steel shutters. Clean. American, Anna noted to herself. She took off her jacket, hung it on the back of the chair, placed her medical bag beside it, and sat down. She felt fear drain out of her like a stream and immediately had an unbearable urge to pee. "Excuse me," she turned to the soldier. "I really need to use the restroom." The soldier nodded. "Please," he said, gesturing down the corridor. Anna grabbed her bag and hurried off. At the end of the hallway, she found a door marked with the familiar boy and girl symbol. She heard the soldier's voice behind her. "You have 20 minutes." She slid the bolt shut as she pulled her pants down and collapsed onto the toilet. She looked around. A proper American restroom, shower stall, sink with a large mirror. Clean towels folded neatly on a shelf. The scent of freshness. She smiled and opened her bag. Inside, as always, were her modest cosmetics, clean underwear, and a pouch with all her hygiene essentials. Anna exhaled and smiled wide at the thought. Well, Anyuta, Ukrainian adventure complete. 15 minutes later, after a shower, she stood in front of the mirror again, gave herself a wink, and said aloud, "All right, Anyuta. Third rate, not defective. Onward and upward." She walked back toward the soldier by the door, unable to resist adding a touch of sass to her stride. Sat down at the table, stretched out her arms in front of her and thought, well, these hands are begging for a manicure. 2 minutes later, a woman in uniform entered the room with brisk military steps. She shut the door behind her, sat across the table, opened her laptop, placed a voice recorder on the table, and switched it on. Good morning. My name is Jane. I'm an officer with the National Security Service. It's January 23rd, 2025. She checked her watch. 6:23 a.m. I'm conducting an interview with Anna Roby regarding the expedited process of granting her clearance to access government-level classified information under Form SF-312. Without lifting her eyes from the monitor, Jane asked, "Are you ready to answer my questions?" "What questions? What's going on?" Jane looked up. "Do you want to go home?" "Yes, of course. But I signed a contract with Doctors Without Borders. I'm supposed to work here at least 2 more weeks. Otherwise, I won't get full payment. And that's very important to me. We've already made arrangements with Doctors Without Borders. They'll pay you the full amount. And of course, you'll get a glowing recommendation. One that will last you a lifetime. What exactly am I supposed to do? And what are we doing right now? If you agree, you'll continue doing your work, but from this moment on, for the United States government. I'm now filling out Form SF-312 to grant you clearance to classified information relevant to the National Security Agency." Anna had 1,000,000 questions. She opened her mouth to ask, but Jane interrupted. "We're short on time. Let's continue." A dozen more questions spun into the chaos already swirling in her mind. Anna decided to save them for later. "Okay, I'm ready." Jane went on, "Anna, we don't have much time. Do you have your passport with you?" Anna began digging through her bag, finally found it, and placed it on the table. The good mood from the shower had evaporated, and fear, after pacing around in her head, settled down low, finding a home somewhere deep in her gut. "What the hell have you gotten yourself into, girl?" she asked herself silently. Jane continued, "Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Anna Roby, swear to tell the truth." Anna raised her hand and repeated mechanically, "So help me God." Jane typed in the passport data into some kind of form on her computer. She went on, reading out paragraphs and document numbers that meant absolutely nothing to Anna. Almost without lifting her eyes from the screen, Jane began asking questions in a flat, neutral tone. The questions were ordinary. Who? Where? When? Why? Anna, now calm, answered automatically. Jane, specialty. Anna, surgical assistant. Jane, last place of work? Anna, outpatient surgical clinic in Tampa. About 10 minutes later, Jane shut her laptop. "That's it. I'll be back in about 15 minutes. She walked out with a wide, almost masculine stride. Anna exhaled deeply, relaxed, leaned back in the hard plastic chair, and closed her eyes. She mentally noted she had slept only 2 hours last night. Her brain instantly slipped into half sleep. Images floated up. A year ago, right after college, Robert had hired her at his surgical clinic. He treated her kindly. He performed 10 to 12 routine procedures a day. Later, she learned he was going through a divorce. No kids. Sometimes, in the evenings, Robert would invite her to the staff room for coffee. He offered her cheap candies from the bowl in the family waiting area. They usually talked about politics, about the war in Ukraine, sometimes about religion. At home, her father always talked about the same things Robert did. So in her conversations with Robert, she echoed phrases she'd heard from her dad. They sounded smart. Robert would sometimes agree, sometimes argue, nervously. Anna realized he thought she was intelligent and insightful. She did the same thing in conversations with her father, quoting Robert. Her dad was proud of her. Eventually, not wanting to be just a parrot, she started reading news online. Sometimes she even listened to smart YouTube debates. Someone on Facebook had once suggested, read the Declaration of Independence. It makes you look intelligent. She did, and to her surprise, it made her think. Endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life? Liberty? Sure, that was more or less clear. But the pursuit of happiness? That one tired her out. Somewhere along the chase, she had lost it. Now, she wasn't even sure what happiness was. At the moment, her pursuit felt like she was idling downhill in neutral, just waiting for happiness to show up somewhere. Her life back then was like a firefighter's life in a city with no fires. Robert, she saw, lived on autopilot too. Divorce, knees and kidneys, removing warts. So when he'd once offered her a 1-year contract with Doctors Without Borders to go work with him in Ukraine, she'd said yes immediately. Apparently, she had dozed off. She snapped awake at Jane's voice. Ms. Roby, sign and initial here. Jane placed several printed forms in front of her. Still not fully awake, Anna signed where the pink and yellow tabs were marked. Jane gathered the forms and slid them into a folder. Then she set a plastic bag on the table in front of Anna. Change into surgical scrubs. Someone will come for you shortly. Thank you. Good luck. She left the room. About 5 minutes later, a knock at the door. Without waiting for a reply, a Marine appeared in the doorway. Miss Roby, follow me. Then, in a more human tone, grab your jacket. Out there, he pointed outward. It's cold. He led her toward the helicopter. The eastern sky was glowing pink. The sun hadn't risen yet. He offered her his arm as she climbed the steps. She looked up and saw the rotor blades starting to spin slowly. Robert stood there in scrubs, surgical mask, gloves, scalpel in hand. He turned to her. Hey, let's work. He pointed to a tray. Anna tossed off her jacket, instinctively pulled on gloves and a mask. Then looked at the monitor. The numbers made no sense. Temperature, 44 degrees Celsius blood pressure, 250 over 160 pulse, 210. She looked down at the body. On the operating table lay a being about 1.50 meters tall. Clearly not human. Head shaped like a gourd. Nostrils flared like a chimpanzee's. Eyes closed but massive, starting near the nose and stretching nearly to the pointed ears. Robert was suturing a head wound. From the shape under the sheet, Anna could tell the creature was female. A thought flashed through her head. So that's what aliens look like. Gabriel monitored the armored vehicle at first, then the helicopter. He issued an urgent recall to all apparatuses, uploaded coordinates, shared the footage. Now all could see Ariel.
Thank you for listening to Chapter 1 of the Third Temple. This story is just beginning, and the questions it asks will only get deeper. If you felt something, curiosity, wonder, maybe even discomfort, then that's exactly where we're meant to go. The next chapter will be released in 1 week. I am new here on YouTube. It will help me tremendously. If you subscribe, leave a comment, share with your friends, or just sit with the silence. See you soon.